The vastness of space stretched endlessly, a canvas of stars and swirling nebulae. It was a sight that could leave anyone breathless. But tonight it wasn't just the beauty of the cosmos that drew attention. It was the celebration. The Galactic fleet, an alliance of dozens of alien species known as the Stellar Concord, had gathered near the edge of the Andromeda Galaxy. They were here to celebrate their victory over the rogue Zarnak horde, a battle that had tested their unity and strength. Commander, Ryan Keller stood on the bridge of the SS Odyssey, one of the few human ships in the fleet. He leaned against the railing, his arms crossed, watching the spectacle unfold. Ships from countless worlds fired bursts of colorful energy into the void, creating dazzling displays of light that danced across the darkness. It was a rare moment, of peace after months of chaos, a chance for every species to come together and revel in their shared triumph. Ryan's second in command, Lieutenant Samantha Sam Brooks, walked up beside him. She held a cup of steaming coffee in her hand, offering it to him with a small smile. "You look like you need this," she said, her voice calm but tinged with concern. He took the cup without hesitation, nodding his thanks. "It's been a long day," he admitted, taking a sip. The warmth spread through him, but it didn't quite ease the tension in his chest. Something about tonight felt off. He couldn't put his finger on it, but the feeling lingered, gnawing at the edges of his mind. Sam noticed the distant look in his eyes. "You okay, boss?" she asked, leaning slightly closer. Her tone was casual, but there was a seriousness beneath it. She trusted Ryan more than anyone else in the fleet, and she knew when something was bothering him. Ryan hesitated before answering. "I don't know," he finally said. "Call it a gut feeling. This whole thing." He gestured vaguely toward the celebrations outside. "It feels too perfect." Sam followed his gaze, taking in the shimmering lights and the hum of activity around them. "Too perfect, what do you mean?" "It's not just us celebrating," Ryan explained, his brow furrowing. "Every species out here has its own agenda. We've seen it before. Everyone pretending to get along until someone decides they want more. Humanity is still new to all this, Sam. We're outsiders. I can't shake the feeling that we're walking into something bigger than we realize." Sam frowned, considering his words. She wanted to reassure him, to tell him he was overthinking things, but deep down, she shared some of his unease. Humanity had joined the Stellar Concord only a few decades ago, and while they had earned respect, they were still viewed with suspicion by many of the older, more established races. The Concord itself was a fragile alliance held together by necessity rather than genuine trust. Before either of them could say anything more, a sudden ripple in the stars caught their attention. At first, it seemed like a trick of the light, faint distortion in the fabric of space, but then it grew darker, spreading outward like an ink blot on paper. The vibrant colors of the celebration dimmed as the shadow expanded, swallowing entire constellations. "What the hell is that?" Sam whispered, her voice tight with alarm. Ryan straightened, his coffee forgotten. His eyes narrowed as he studied the phenomenon. Whatever it wasn't natural. Ships nearby began to slow their engines, their crews pausing mid-celebration, to stare at the growing anomaly. A low murmur of confusion rippled through the fleet, quickly escalating into outright panic as the shadow resolved into something far more sinister. Thousands of sleek, angular warships emerged from hyperspace, their hulls gleaming with an unnatural sheen. They moved in perfect formation, cutting through the chaos like a blade. Each ship bore no markings of the Stellar Concord or any known alien race. Instead, they flew under a single banner, the flag of Earth. A collective gasp swept through the fleet as Admiral Lucas Drake's voice boomed across all communication channels. "To the Stellar Concord, hear me now," he declared, his tone cold and commanding. "Humanity has long endured your condescension and interference. We will no longer bow to your rules. From this moment forward, Earth claims its destiny." Ryan's blood ran cold. He recognized Drake's voice instantly. The man had always been ambitious, driven by a fierce belief in humanity's superiority. But this was madness. Earth's fleet shouldn't even have been capable of assembling such a force, let alone launching a surprise attack on the conquered. Beside him, Sam clenched her fists, her knuckles white. "This can't be happening," she muttered, shaking her head. "Drake's gone rogue. He's starting a war." Ryan didn't respond. His mind raced, trying to process what he was seeing. The ships surrounding them were massive, armed with technology far beyond anything the conquered had encountered before. Weapon systems glowed ominously along their hulls, ready to unleash devastation at a moment's notice. Already some of the alien vessels were attempting to flee, only to find themselves trapped in gravitational wells created by Earth's advanced weaponry. "Ryan," Sam said urgently, snapping him out of his thoughts. "We need to do something. If we don't act fast, this is going to spiral out of control." He nodded, forcing himself to focus. "Get me a secure line to Maria Lopez," he ordered, "and alert the rest of our crew. We're not sitting this out." As Sam hurried to carry out his instructions, Ryan turned back to the viewport. The once brilliant display of celebration had been replaced by a grim tableau of fear and uncertainty. The stars themselves seemed to dim in the presence of Earth's armada, casting a pall over the galaxy. For the first time in his life, Ryan questioned whether humanity truly belonged among the stars. Drake's actions threatened to undo everything they had worked so hard to achieve. Yet even as doubt crept into his heart, Ryan knew one thing for certain. Whatever happened next, he would fight to protect the fragile bond between Earth and the rest of the universe. Because if that bond broke, there might be no coming back from the darkness. The shadow that had darkened the stars now loomed over the entire fleet. Panic spread like wildfire as ships scrambled to respond to the sudden appearance of Earth's armada. The once celebratory atmosphere was gone, replaced by confusion and fear. Alien crews shouted orders in their native languages, their voices crackling over communication channels. Some ships tried to retreat, only to find themselves caught in invisible gravitational traps created by Earth's advanced technology. Commander Ryan Keller gripped the railing on the bridge of the SS Odyssey, his knuckles white. His mind raced, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. Thousands of warships, Earth's warships, had appeared out of nowhere, their sleek designs glinting menacingly in the starlight. Each vessel was larger and more heavily armed than anything the Stellar Concord had ever encountered. It wasn't just a show of force, it was a declaration of dominance. Lieutenant Samantha Sam Brooks stood beside him, her face pale but determined. She had already sent out alerts to the rest of the crew and established contact with Maria Lopez, one of their allies in the Concord. Now she watched the chaos unfold outside the viewport, her jaw clenched tightly. "This is bad, Ryan," she said quietly. "Really bad." Ryan nodded, his eyes locked on the massive flagship at the center of the formation. It was the SS Invincible, Admiral Lucas Drake's personal command ship. Ryan knew Drake well, or at least he thought he did. The man had always been ambitious, driven by a belief that humanity should carve its own path among the stars. But this went far beyond ambition. This was betrayal on a galactic scale. Admiral Drake's voice echoed through the fleet once, again cutting through the noise. "To the leaders of the Stellar Concord, your time has ended. Humanity will no longer tolerate your interference in our affairs. You have exploited us, dismissed us, and treated us as second-class members of this alliance. No longer. Today we take our rightful place as rulers of the galaxy." The words hit Ryan like a punch to the gut. He glanced at Sam, who looked equally stunned. "Rulers?" she muttered under her breath. "What is he talking about? We're part of the Concord. We helped build it." But Drake's message was clear. Humanity was done playing by the rules. Ryan could hear the anger in his voice, the bitterness of years spent feeling overlooked and undervalued. And while Ryan understood those feelings, he had felt them himself. At times, he couldn't justify what Drake was doing. Starting a war with the entire galaxy wasn't the answer. Outside, the situation grew worse. Several alien ships attempted to break free from the gravitational wells holding them in place, only to be targeted by Earth's weapons. Bright flashes of light erupted as plasma cannons fired, striking down those who resisted. The Concord's forces were scattered and unprepared, caught completely off guard by the ambush. Their leaders scrambled to organize a response, but it was too late. Earth's fleet had the advantage, and they weren't hesitating to use it. On the bridge of the Odyssey, alarms blared as enemy ships closed in. The crew worked frantically to prepare for battle, though everyone knew they were outmatched. "Shields up," Ryan barked, his voice cutting through the tension. "Divert all available power to the engines. We need to stay mobile." "Yes, sir," came the reply from the engineering station. The hum of the ship's systems grew louder as energy surged through its circuits. Sam turned to Ryan, her expression grim. "We can't fight them, Ryan. Not like this. If we engage, we'll be torn apart." "I know," Ryan said, his tone heavy with frustration. "But we can't run either. Not yet. We need to buy time. For the conquered, for Earth, for everyone." Sam nodded reluctantly. She didn't argue further because she knew he was right. Running wouldn't solve anything. They needed a plan, and fast. Meanwhile, aboard the Invincible, Admiral Drake paced the command deck, his sharp features illuminated by the glow of holographic displays. Around him, officers relayed updates on the fleet's progress. So far, everything was going according to plan. The surprise attack had shattered the Conquered's morale, leaving their forces disorganized and vulnerable. Drake stopped in front of a large viewport, gazing out at the chaos below. A faint smile played on his lips as he watched alien ships struggle against his fleet's superior firepower. "This is what humanity deserves," he murmured to himself. "Respect, power, fear." One of his subordinates approached cautiously, holding a data pad. "Sir, we've received reports of resistance from some of the smaller vessels. Should we eliminate them?" Drake waved a hand dismissively. "Not yet. Let them squirm. I want them to see exactly what they're up against before we crush them completely." His voice hardened. "And if anyone tries to flee, destroy them. No survivors." Back on the Odyssey, Ryan and Sam monitored the situation closely. The Conquered's leaders were finally beginning to coordinate a response, but it was slow and disjointed. Some ships managed to break free from the gravitational traps, joining together in makeshift formations to defend themselves. Others weren't so lucky, succumbing to Earth's relentless assault. "We need to warn Earth," Sam said suddenly, breaking the tense silence. "If Drake keeps this up, he'll destroy everything we've built. There has to be someone back home who can stop him." Ryan shook his head. "It's not that simple. Drake's got supporters everywhere, including in high places. Even if we manage to get a message through, there's no guarantee anyone will listen. But we have to try," Sam insisted. "If we don't, this war will tear humanity apart. And when the Conquered retaliates, and they will, it won't just be Drake paying the price, it'll be all of us." Ryan sighed, knowing she was right. As much as he wanted to focus on surviving the immediate threat, he couldn't ignore the bigger picture. If Earth continued down this path, there would be no turning back. The damage would be irreparable. "All right," he said after a moment. "Contact Elena Carter. She's our best shot at getting through to someone who can make a difference." Elena. Carter was a young diplomat working at the United Nations Space Council, a position that gave her access to key decision-makers. More importantly, she had connections within both Earth's government and the Conquered. If anyone could navigate the political minefield ahead, it was her. Sam quickly sent out an encrypted transmission, hoping Elena would receive it in time. As they waited for a response, Ryan turned his attention back to the battle raging outside. The odds were stacked against them, but giving up wasn't an option. Not now, not ever. For the first time in his life, Ryan felt truly alone. Outnumbered and outgunned, he and his crew were caught between two sides, both of which claimed to represent humanity's future. Yet neither side seemed willing to consider the cost of their actions. All Ryan could do was hold on to hope that reason would prevail before it was too late. As the stars flickered dimly above, overshadowed by the looming threat of war, Ryan whispered a silent promise to himself. Whatever happened next, he would fight to protect the fragile bond between Earth and the rest of the galaxy. Because if that bond broke, there might be no coming back from the darkness. Elena Carter sat in her small office at the United Nations Space Council, staring blankly at the screen in front of her. The room was quiet except for the faint hum of the ventilation system and the occasional beep of incoming messages. Normally, she would have been focused on drafting proposals or reviewing diplomatic reports, but tonight, her mind was elsewhere. The news of Admiral Lucas Drake's attack on the Stellar Concord had already reached Earth, though details were scarce and contradictory. Some hailed Drake as a hero, while others condemned his actions as reckless and dangerous. Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft chime from her console. A secure transmission had come through, marked urgent. Elena frowned as she opened it, recognizing the sender immediately. Commander Ryan Keller. She hadn't spoken to him in months, but his face appeared on the screen now, looking tense and weary. "Elena," he began without preamble, "we don't have much time. Drake's fleet has launched an unprovoked attack on the Concord. They're targeting civilian ships and neutral planets. If we don't act fast, this could escalate into a full-scale war." Elena's heart sank. She had feared something like this might happen, but hearing it confirmed made it feel all too real. "What do you need me to do?" she asked, her voice steady despite the knot forming in her stomach. "We need someone on Earth who can reach out to Drake's supporters and expose what's really going on," Ryan explained. "If people back home knew the truth about the weapons, the casualties, they might turn against him. You're our best chance." Elena nodded slowly, absorbing his words. It was a risky plan, but she understood the stakes. If Drake succeeded in fracturing humanity's relationship with the Conquered, the consequences would be catastrophic. Yet agreeing to help meant putting herself in danger. She wasn't a soldier or a spy. She was just a diplomat trying to keep the peace. "I'll do what I can," she said finally, "but it won't be easy. Drake has powerful allies, and a lot of people are buying into his rhetoric about humanity standing alone." Ryan gave her a tight smile. "I know it's asking a lot, but if anyone can pull this off, it's you." The transmission ended, leaving Elena alone with her thoughts. She leaned back in her chair, rubbing her temples. This wasn't how she imagined her day ending. Her mind drifted to her brother, Daniel Carter, who served aboard one of Drake's ships. She hadn't heard from him since the attack began, and worry gnawed at her. Was he safe? Did he even know what he was fighting for? Determined to find answers, Elena accessed Earth's Central Command network. It was a risky move. Hacking into classified systems could land her in serious trouble, but she didn't have a choice. Using a set of encryption keys she had acquired during her time at the Council, she navigated through layers of security until she found what she was looking for: detailed schematics and operational plans for Drake's fleet. What she discovered chilled her to the bone. The weapon systems aboard the SS Invincible and other ships were far more advanced than anything publicly known. They weren't just designed to disable enemy vessels. They were capable of destabilizing entire star systems, rendering planets uninhabitable. Worse still, Drake intended to test these weapons on neutral worlds aligned with the Conquered, using them as examples to force compliance. Elena's hands trembled as she downloaded the files onto a secure drive. She couldn't let this information stay hidden. Someone had to stop Drake before it was too late. Before she could disconnect, another message popped up on her screen. It was from Daniel. The text was brief and cryptic. "Stay safe. Trust no one." Elena stared at the words, her chest tightening. What did he mean? Was he warning her about Drake, or was he involved somehow? She didn't have time to dwell on it. The longer she stayed logged into the network, the greater the risk of being detected. Quickly, she erased her digital trail and shut down the connection. With the data safely stored, she turned her attention to finding allies who could help her expose Drake's plans. Her first call was to Maria Lopez, a close friend and fellow advocate for peace between Earth and the Conquered. Maria had worked alongside Ryan in the past and shared Elena's belief in diplomacy over conflict. When Elena explained what she had uncovered, Maria didn't hesitate to offer her support. "This is insane," Maria said, her voice low and urgent. "If Drake uses those weapons, there's no telling how many lives will be lost. We need to get this information to the right people." "I know," Elena replied, "but we have to be careful. If Drake finds out we're working against him, we're dead." Maria agreed, promising to spread the word discreetly among trusted contacts. Together, they devised a plan to leak the information to key figures within Earth's government and military, hoping to create enough dissent to undermine Drake's authority. As the hours passed, Elena grew increasingly anxious. Every knock on her door or unfamiliar voice in the hallway sent her pulse racing. She knew she was playing a dangerous game, but backing down wasn't an option. Too much was at stake. Later that evening, she received another unexpected message, this time from Lieutenant Alex Turner, a former protege of Drake's who had recently defected. Alex claimed to have inside knowledge of Drake's strategy and offered to assist in any way he could. Skeptical but desperate for help, Elena arranged a secret meeting in an abandoned warehouse near the spaceport. When she arrived, Alex was waiting for her, his face partially obscured by the shadows. He looked nervous but determined. "You're taking a big risk coming here," he said as she approached. "So are you," Elena replied evenly. "Why should I trust you?" Alex hesitated before answering. "Because I've seen what Drake is capable of. He doesn't care about humanity. He only cares about power. If we don't stop him, he'll destroy everything." Elena studied him carefully, searching for any sign of deception. Finally, she nodded. "All right, tell me what you know." Over the next hour, Alex provided crucial details about Drake's plans, including the locations of key weapon systems and vulnerabilities in the fleet's defenses. By the time they parted ways, Elena felt a glimmer of hope for the first time in days. Maybe, just maybe, they stood a chance. Back at her office, Elena compiled everything she had gathered into a single report. She encrypted it and sent copies to trusted individuals across Earth and the Conquered, praying it would reach the right hands. As she hit send, she allowed herself a moment of quiet reflection. The road ahead would be fraught with danger, but she refused to give up. Humanity's future depended on it. For better or worse, the die had been cast. The SS Odyssey drifted quietly in the shadow of a nearby asteroid field, its engines silent and its systems running on minimal power. Commander Ryan Keller stood on the bridge, staring at the holographic display that showed the positions of Earth's fleet and the scattered remnants of the stellar Concord. The situation was grim. The Concord's forces were battered and disorganized, their ships either destroyed or retreating to regroup. Earth's armada, led by Admiral Lucas Drake, continued its relentless advance, pushing deeper into neutral territories. Ryan's mind raced as he tried to piece together a plan. The odds were overwhelmingly against them, but giving up wasn't an option. He glanced at Lieutenant Samantha Sam Brooks, who sat at her station, reviewing the data Elena Carter had sent. Her expression was tense, her brow furrowed as she absorbed the gravity of the information. "This is worse than we thought," Sam said finally, looking up at Ryan. "If Drake uses those weapons, it won't just be the Conquered that suffers. Entire star systems could be wiped out. Neutral planets, civilian populations, they'll all be collateral damage." Ryan nodded grimly. He had already read through the report multiple times, each detail more horrifying than the last. The advanced weaponry aboard the SS Invincible wasn't just designed for combat. It was built to annihilate entire worlds. Drake's willingness to use such destructive power terrified him. "We need to stop him," Ryan said firmly, his voice cutting through the tension. "But we can't do it from out here. We need to get closer, to the heart of his fleet." Sam looked skeptical. "You mean infiltrate the Invincible? That ship is crawling with loyalists. Even if we manage to get aboard, how do we disable the weapons without getting caught?" Ryan didn't have all the answers, but he knew they couldn't afford to hesitate. "We'll figure it out once we're inside," he said. "Elena's intel gives us a starting point. If we can reach the control room where the weapon systems are managed, we might be able to shut them down, or at least buy enough time for the Concorde to mount a counterattack." Sam sighed but nodded reluctantly. She trusted Ryan's judgment even when the risks seemed insurmountable. "All right," she said, "but we're going to need help. A lot of it." Ryan agreed. They couldn't pull this off alone. Turning to the rest of the crew, he called for volunteers. To his relief, nearly everyone stepped forward. Despite the fear in their eyes, they understood what was at stake. Humanity's future, and perhaps the fate of the galaxy, depended on their success. With the team assembled, Ryan contacted Alex Turner, the defector who had provided crucial details about Drake's fleet. Alex confirmed he would assist from the inside, feeding them real-time updates and helping guide them through the labyrinthine corridors of the Invincible. It was a risky alliance, but they had no other choice. Hours later, the Odyssey approached the edge of Earth's fleet under the cover of darkness. Using stolen codes provided by Elena, they slipped past automated defenses and docked with a smaller supply vessel. From there, they transferred to a maintenance pod, disguising themselves as technicians tasked with routine repairs. As the pod drifted toward the Invincible, Ryan felt his stomach tighten. The flagship loomed ahead, its massive hull bristling with weapons and sensors. Every instinct told him to turn back, but he pushed the feeling aside. Failure wasn't an option. Once aboard, the team split into two groups. Ryan and Sam led one group toward the central control room, while the others created diversions to draw attention away from their mission. Moving through the narrow corridors, they relied on Alex's directions to avoid patrols and security checkpoints. Despite their careful planning, things quickly went wrong. An unexpected alarm blared, echoing through the ship. Red lights flashed overhead as automated turrets activated, scanning for intruders. Ryan motioned for the team to take cover behind a stack of crates, his heart pounding. "We've been spotted," Sam whispered urgently. "What now?" Ryan clenched his jaw, thinking fast. "Stick to the plan, keep moving. If we stop, we're dead." They pressed on, dodging patrols and narrowly avoiding detection. At one point, they encountered a group of engineers working on a damaged console. Thinking quickly, Ryan stepped forward, pretending to be part of the maintenance crew. "What's the issue?" he asked casually, hoping his disguise held up. One of the engineers frowned but didn't question him. "Power fluctuations in Sector 7, the man replied gruffly. "Maintenance teams are supposed to handle it." Ryan nodded, feigning concern. "We're on it. Carry on." As the engineers returned to their work, Ryan signaled for his team to keep moving. So far, so good. Finally, they reached the control room. The door was heavily guarded, but Alex had warned them about this. Using a device he had smuggled aboard, Ryan hacked into the locking mechanism, disabling it just long enough for them to slip inside. Inside, the room was dimly lit, dominated by rows of consoles and glowing screens. Sam immediately went to work, her fingers flying over the keyboard as she accessed the weapon systems. Ryan kept watch, his pulse racing as he listened for any sign of approaching guards. "It's worse than I thought," Sam muttered, her voice tight with frustration. "These systems are tied directly into the ship's core. If we disable them, we risk shutting down the entire vessel." "Do it anyway," Ryan ordered. "We don't have a choice." Sam nodded, focusing intently as she input a series of commands. The screens flickered and alarms began to sound throughout the ship. They had triggered a cascade failure, destabilizing the Invincible's power core. Time was running out. As the lights dimmed and the hum of the ship's systems faltered, Ryan turned to Sam. "That should do it. Let's move." They exited the control room just as chaos erupted around them. Crew members rushed through the corridors, shouting orders and trying to contain the damage. Amid the confusion, Ryan spotted Alex waiting for them near an emergency. "Exit. This way," Alex called, waving them over. "We need to get off the ship before the core goes critical." The team followed him through a maze of passageways, dodging falling debris and bursts of energy from failing systems. Finally, they reached an escape pod bay. One pod remained operational, its hatch open and ready for launch. "Go!" Ryan shouted, ushering the others inside. As the last person climbed aboard, he hit the release button, sending the pod hurtling away from the Invincible. Behind them, the flagship shuddered violently, its engines sputtering as the power core destabilized. Explosions rippled across its surface, lighting up the darkness of space. For a moment, it seemed as though the entire ship might implode, but then the cascading failures stabilized, at least temporarily. As the pod sped toward safety, Ryan allowed himself a brief moment of relief. They had done it. The Invincible was crippled, and Drake's plans had been thrown into disarray. But the battle was far from over. The war between Earth and the Concord still raged, and the road to peace would be long and difficult. For now, though, they had struck a blow against the darkness, and that was enough. The escape pod drifted through the void of space, its small engines humming softly as it carried Ryan Keller and his team away from the crippled SS Invincible. Inside, the mood was tense, but tinged with a fragile sense of hope. They had succeeded in disabling the flagship's weapon systems, at least temporarily, but the cost of their actions weighed heavily on everyone's minds. The faint glow of explosions still flickered in the distance as the Invincible struggled to stabilize its failing core. Ryan leaned back against the cold metal wall of the pod, his eyes fixed on the chaos unfolding behind them. His hands were trembling slightly, though whether from exhaustion or adrenaline he couldn't tell. "That was too close," he muttered under his breath, breaking the silence. Lieutenant Samantha Sam Brooks sat across from him, her face pale but resolute. She nodded slowly, her gaze shifting between the viewport and the datapad in her lap. "We got lucky," she admitted. "If Alex hadn't been there to guide us, we'd never have made it out alive." Alex Turner, who was seated nearby, gave a small, humorless smile. "Luck had nothing to do with it," he said quietly. "You knew exactly what you were doing. I just pointed you in the right direction." Ryan glanced at Alex, studying the younger man's face. There was a weariness there, a shadow of guilt that suggested he carried more than just the weight of betrayal. "Why did you help us?" Ryan asked finally, his voice steady but curious. "Drake trusted you. You could have stayed loyal." Alex hesitated before answering, his fingers tapping nervously against his knee. "Because I saw where this was heading," he said after a moment. "Drake doesn't care about humanity or anyone else for that matter. He only cares about power. If we let him keep going, he'll destroy everything, including Earth." The words hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. No one spoke for a long moment, each lost in their own thoughts. The enormity of what they had done, and the risks they had taken, was beginning to sink in. Meanwhile, aboard the Invincible, Admiral Lucas Drake paced the command deck, his sharp features twisted in fury. The once imposing flagship was now a shadow of its former self, its systems failing and its crew scrambling to contain the damage. Reports poured in from every corner of the ship, detailing cascading failures in the power core and critical systems. Drake ignored most of them, his focus locked on one overriding fact. Someone had sabotaged his fleet. "Find them," he barked at his officers, his voice cutting through the noise like a blade. "Whoever did this, they're still on board. Tear the ship apart if you have to, but bring me the traitors." His subordinates exchanged uneasy glances but didn't dare argue. Drake's temper was legendary, and failure was not something he tolerated lightly. One officer stepped forward hesitantly, holding a datapad. "Sir, preliminary scans suggest the intruders may have escaped via an emergency pod. We're tracking their trajectory now." Drake snatched the datapad from the man's hand, his eyes scanning the data furiously. When he realized the pod was heading toward a nearby Concord outpost, his expression darkened further. "So, they've gone running to the enemy," he growled. "Typical. Cowards always flee when the tide turns against them." He turned to another officer, his voice cold and calculating. "Prepare a strike team. Intercept that pod and eliminate its occupants. And send reinforcements to secure the outpost while you're at it. I want no survivors." As orders were relayed and preparations began, Drake allowed himself a brief moment of reflection. This setback was inconvenient, but it wasn't insurmountable. The Invincible would recover, and so would his plans. Humanity's destiny was inevitable. It was only a matter of time before the rest of the galaxy bowed to their will. Back in the escape pod, Ryan and his team prepared for the next phase of their mission. Their destination was a remote Concord outpost hidden within the asteroid field, a temporary refuge where survivors of the attack had gathered. It was also the closest location where they could regroup and coordinate a response to Drake's aggression. "We need to warn the outpost about the strike team," Sam said urgently, pulling up a map of the surrounding area on her datapad. If Drake sends reinforcements, they'll be overwhelmed. Ryan nodded, his jaw tightening. We'll send a transmission as soon as we're within range, but we can't rely on them having enough firepower to hold off an assault. We'll need to come up with a plan to defend the outpost, or at least buy them some time. Alex leaned forward, his expression thoughtful. What if we use the asteroids? To our advantage? Set traps or ambush points? The outpost itself isn't heavily fortified, but the terrain around it could give us the edge we need. That's risky, Sam interjected. If we misjudge the timing, we'll be caught in the open with nowhere to run. It's all we've got, Ryan said firmly. We don't have the luxury of playing it safe. If we lose the outpost, we lose our foothold in this sector, and possibly the war. The team fell silent, each member grappling with the gravity of their situation. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and operating on borrowed time. Yet despite the odds, there was a shared determination among them, a refusal to give up without a fight. When the escape pod finally docked at the outpost, they were greeted by a mix of relief and apprehension. The outpost's commander, a grizzled alien named Captain Zoran, wasted no time getting down to business. We've picked up traces of incoming ships, he informed them. Looks like Earth's fleet is sending reinforcements. What's your plan? Ryan quickly outlined their strategy, emphasizing the importance of using the asteroid field to mask their movements and set up defensive positions. Zoran listened intently, nodding occasionally as he absorbed the details. It's a bold move, he admitted. But boldness is all we've got left. My crew will follow your lead. With the outpost's resources pooled together, the team set to work fortifying their position. Mines were deployed in strategic locations, rigged to detonate upon contact. Decoys were placed throughout the asteroid field to confuse enemy sensors, while snipers took up positions along ridges and craters. Every available weapon was distributed among the defenders, ensuring that even those with minimal combat experience could contribute. As the hours passed, tension mounted. The distant hum of approaching engines grew louder, signaling the arrival of Drake's forces. Ryan stood atop a rocky outcrop, binoculars in hand, watching as the first wave of ships entered the field. His grip tightened on the device as he counted the enemy vessels, mentally calculating their chances of survival. They're here, he announced over the comm channel, his voice calm but firm. Everyone, take your positions. Remember, stay low, stay sharp, and don't waste a shot. The battle began with a deafening roar as Earth's ships unleashed a barrage of plasma fire, lighting up the darkness with streaks of blue and green. The defenders returned fire, their shots precise and deliberate, targeting weak points in the enemy's formation. Explosions erupted across the asteroid field, sending shards of rock tumbling into space. For a while, it seemed as though the defenders might hold their ground. The ambushes worked as intended, catching several enemy ships off guard and forcing them to retreat. But as more reinforcements arrived, the tide began to shift. The outpost's shields faltered under the relentless assault, and casualties mounted. Ryan fought alongside his team, firing with steady precision as he moved from cover to cover. Beside him, Sam shouted updates and coordinates, her voice hoarse but unwavering. Alex, meanwhile, coordinated the placement of additional mines, buying precious seconds for the defenders to regroup. Despite their efforts, the situation grew increasingly dire. Outnumbered and outmatched, the defenders were pushed back towards the heart of the outpost. Ryan knew they couldn't hold out much longer, but then something unexpected happened. A sudden burst of light illuminated the battlefield as a new fleet emerged from hyperspace. Ships bearing the insignia of the Stellar Concord joined the fray, their advanced weaponry turning the tide of the battle. Earth's forces, caught off guard by the unexpected reinforcements, began to falter. Ryan allowed himself a brief smile as he watched the Concord ships drive back Drake's fleet. Against all odds, they had held long enough for help to arrive. The war was far from over, but for the first time in days there was a glimmer of hope. As the dust settled and the sounds of battle faded, Ryan turned to his team. "We did it," he said quietly, his voice filled with both relief and resolve. "But this is just the beginning. We've got a lot of work ahead of us, and with that, They prepared to face whatever came next, together. The battle around the conquered outpost had ended, but the cost of victory was etched into every face. The defenders, human and alien alike, moved slowly, their bodies weary and their spirits battered. Smoke drifted lazily from damaged ships, and the asteroids surrounding the outpost bore the scars of plasma fire. Amid the chaos, Commander Ryan Keller stood on the edge of a rocky ridge, his eyes scanning the remnants of Earth's fleet as they retreated into the distance. Lieutenant Samantha Sam Brooks approached him, her armor scorched and her expression grim. "They're pulling back," she said, her voice low. "Looks like Drake decided he'd had enough for now." Ryan nodded, though there was no satisfaction in his gesture. The arrival of the conquered reinforcements had saved them, but it wasn't a true victory, not yet. Earth's forces were still out there, regrouping and licking their wounds. And Admiral Lucas Drake wouldn't give up easily. If anything, this setback would only fuel his determination to prove humanity's dominance. "We got lucky," Ryan admitted, his tone heavy with exhaustion. "If the conquered hadn't shown up when they did," Sam interrupted firmly. "And because of that, we've got a fighting chance. Don't sell us short, Ryan. We held our ground long enough to make a difference." Her words carried a note of defiance, but Ryan knew she was right. Against overwhelming odds, they had managed to survive, and even strike back at Drake's plans. Still, the road ahead was uncertain. The war between Earth and the Concord was far from over, and the lines between friend and foe were growing blurrier by the day. As the survivors began tending to the wounded and repairing what they could of, the outpost, Captain Zoran joined Ryan and Sam. The alien commander's scales shimmered faintly in the dim light, though his usual confidence seemed tempered by fatigue. "Your people fight well," he said, inclining his head toward Ryan. "But I fear this is only the beginning of a much larger conflict." Ryan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "You're not wrong. Drake won't stop until he feels he's achieved his goals, or until someone stops him." Zoran's gaze sharpened. "Then perhaps it is time to consider how best to end this before it consumes us all. Humanity cannot stand alone against the galaxy, nor should it try. But neither can the Concord afford to let this escalate further." The weight of Zoran's words hung in the air. Ryan knew the captain was right. If the war continued unchecked, it would devastate entire star systems, leaving nothing but ruin in its wake. A solution needed to be found, one that didn't involve more bloodshed. Back on Earth, Elena Carter worked tirelessly to rally support against Admiral Drake. The information she had leaked had begun to spread, sparking outrage among those who opposed his aggressive tactics. Yet not everyone was convinced. Many saw Drake as a champion of humanity's independence, a leader willing to take bold steps to secure Earth's future. For every ally Elena gained, another turned away, unwilling to believe the truth about the Admiral's plans. Her efforts weren't entirely in vain, however. Key figures within Earth's government and military began to question Drake's motives, especially after reports surfaced of civilian casualties caused by his attacks. Some even hinted at the possibility of a coup, though such talk was dangerous and carried significant risks. Elena spent hours poring over encrypted messages and coordinating with trusted contacts across the globe. Maria Lopez remained a steadfast supporter, helping to amplify Elena's message and connect her with influential leaders. Together, they crafted a strategy to expose Drake's actions to the public, hoping to sway popular opinion before it was too late. One evening, as Elena sat in her office reviewing new intelligence, her brother Daniel reached out again. This time, his message was longer, filled with a mix of desperation and resolve. "I don't agree with everything Drake is doing," he wrote, "but I believed in the cause, now I'm not so sure. If you're working to stop him, count me in, whatever it takes." Elena stared at the screen, tears welling up in her eyes. For weeks, she had feared for Daniel's safety, wondering if he had been swept up in Drake's ideology. His message gave her hope, not just for herself, but for the possibility of change within Earth's ranks. Meanwhile, aboard the crippled SS Invincible, Admiral Drake seethed with anger. His flagship was barely functional, its crew reduced to scrambling repairs just to keep the ship operational. Reports of dissent within Earth's government infuriated him, as did the knowledge that traitors like Alex Turner had played a role in sabotaging his plans. Drake paced the command deck, his sharp features twisted in frustration. Around him, officers worked frantically to restore power and stabilize the vessel. Despite the setbacks, Drake refused to abandon his mission. "This changes nothing," he muttered under his breath. "Humanity will rise above the rest. No matter the cost." A young officer approached cautiously, holding a datapay. "Sir, we've received word from Earth. There's unrest. Some factions are calling for your removal." Drake stopped mid-step, his piercing gaze locking onto the officer. "Let them try," he snapped. "They'll see soon enough that I am the only one capable of leading humanity to greatness." The officer flinched, but didn't retreat. "What are your orders, sir?" Drake's lips curled into a cold smile. "Prepare the fleet, we strike again, and this time we leave no room for doubt." In the aftermath of the battle, Ryan and his team convened with representatives from the Conquered to discuss their next move. The meeting took place aboard a neutral vessel, its interior adorned with symbols of peace and unity. Aliens of various species gathered around a circular table, their expressions ranging from cautious optimism to outright skepticism. Ryan addressed the group, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "We can't keep fighting like this," he began. "Every shot fired, every life lost, it only drives us further apart. We need to find a way to end this without destroying each other." A representative from the Valak species spoke up, his deep voice resonating through the chamber. "Admiral Drake has made it clear that he does not value diplomacy. How do you propose we negotiate with someone who refuses to listen?" Ryan hesitated, knowing the answer wouldn't be easy. "We target the source," he said finally. "If we can remove Drake from power, we create an opening for peace talks. It won't solve everything, but it's a start." The room fell silent as the representatives considered his proposal. Finally, Captain Zoran spoke. "It is a risky plan, but it may be our only chance. The Conquered will provide whatever support you need." With the backing of the Alliance, Ryan and his team devised a daring operation to infiltrate Earth's Central Command and confront Drake directly. Using intel provided by Elena and Daniel, they identified key vulnerabilities in Earth's defenses. It was a long shot, but it was their best option. Days later, the final phase of the mission unfolded. Ryan, Sam, Alex, and a small strike team boarded a cloaked shuttle, slipping past Earth's orbital patrols and landing near Drake's headquarters. The facility was heavily guarded, but with precise timing and careful planning, they managed to breach its walls. Inside, they found Drake standing alone in a vast control room, surrounded by holographic displays showing the status of his fleet. He turned to face them, his expression unreadable. "So, you've come to stop me," he said, his voice calm but tinged with disdain. "Did you really think it would be that simple?" Ryan stepped forward, his hand resting on the hilt of his weapon. "It doesn't have to end like this, Drake. Stand down and we can find a way to fix this together." Drake laughed bitterly. "Fix it, you mean bow to the Conquered's will? Surrender everything we fought for? Never." Before anyone could react, alarms blared throughout the facility. Reinforcements were closing in, forcing Ryan and his team to act quickly. In the ensuing confrontation, Drake was subdued, though not without resistance. As he was led away, his parting words echoed in the room. "Mark my words, you'll regret this." With Drake removed from power, the path to peace became clearer, though challenges remained. Negotiations between Earth and the Concord were tense but productive, guided by the efforts of individuals like Elena and Maria. Slowly, trust began to rebuild, brick by painstaking brick. For Ryan, standing on the bridge of the SS Odyssey as the stars shone brightly once more, there was a sense of cautious optimism. The galaxy was fragile, its bonds tested but not broken. And while the scars of war would linger for years to come, there was hope for humanity, for the Conquered, and for the shared future they were building together.